Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us again here at the Green Party Eco Summit in Boise, Idaho. Our presenter for this particular section is Dana Lohman. She is one of our community activists here, community organizers. She does a lot of volunteer work, in particular with some of our community gardens. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to have a little friendly chat about the things that make our community gardens work and why it's so important that we work with these particular kinds of small acts of rebellion. So, Dana,
yes. Again, resistance is fertile. I'm terribly sorry. I had an anxiety attack, so my good friend Joe here decided to help me get through this together as a team. So thank you very much, Joe.
You're welcome.
It's very good to be here. I am one of the main volunteers. I help organize the volunteers for the Boise School District Community Gardens program. So I get to work hands-on a lot with the parent-teacher organization. So a lot of our school staff, parents, teachers, and students. That's where a lot of my experience has come from, is working with the communities through that, plus some of the other community gardens in and around the Treasure Valley.
So one of the things that you deal with in a certain amount of your education training is related to food deserts. That's something, it's not so much a big problem in Boise, but I know that there are certain other areas around the world, well, around the United States, where simply having a garden in your own yard is problematic.
Yes, that's where space conservation and utilizing the resources that you have already contribute to overcoming that hardship by taking the resources that you already have and then building from that. I'm nervous.
I completely understand. That's okay. So, space conservation is a big issue, particularly in areas like Boise, where we're starting to deal with higher population density, in order to accommodate, public spaces or green spaces, and places like our apartment complexes. We now have a large urban population that doesn't have adequate area. So, what kind of suggestions do you have as far as renovating space in order to move forward in building, personal gardens, community gardens, and renovating public spaces?
I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. This is crazy. I'm usually really good. I had something totally right now that I was just going to read, and even the impromptu is hard for me.
So how did you come to make arrangements with the school, or how did the schools come to the arrangements for using their spaces for the gardens to use? Like Whittier School, isn't that one of the gardens you work on?
Yes, they implemented the program some years ago, and it branched out from, I think it started with Boise, and then eventually branched out to the other neighboring cities and towns. We received funding for that, and we combat losing funding constantly due to potential lack of interest. So we're always trying to implement the volunteerism to pull people into it and generate attention to the program to keep it alive. We also we need communication between the people in order to make use of all of the garden supplies. like and the produce that we get from the gardening.
And so they actually sell the produce from the gardens?
No, we
Oh,
give
okay.
it directly to the school student bodies and parents.
Okay, so it's like a Whittier School Food Bank program. Fresh
Kind of,
produce
yeah.
for the underprivileged students, that sort of program that they run? or
It's
is it just-
available to the entire student body. Anybody who wants any vegetables or fruits or herbs from it can get some.
Nice, so it's like a free garden table.
Yes, that's definitely a better description of it.
And so outside of the school, what other urban garden projects are you familiar with here in the Boise Valley?
I work a lot more with the food bank gardens. They have they had a community garden at the food bank on Hayes Street in downtown Boise. And then I also work with a lot of the low-income apartment community gardens. So I go in there and I do a lot of seed store share parties and help distribute heirloom seeds amongst all of the gardens all around the valley.
Nice. So I know that there's several community gardens around the area. I went on Google the other day and tried to find a list of where they're all in. There is no one collective list of all the community gardens. You got like
No.
4 or 5 different websites, and they all maintain different gardens. What sort of recommendation do you have as far as trying to research and find a urban garden or community garden in your area?
I would definitely suggest going through the Boise School District Community Gardens program first, because they have schools all over the place and they can direct you to them.
You have any good suggestions as far as where to go for your seeds, where to learn to do the prep? I know you do the work with Whittier, and Boise Urban Garden School does some urban training on how to do it.
I like bugs. That's a
You
good
like
program.
bugs?
That's a
Yeah,
good
I love
program
bugs,
too.
bugs. Bugs, it's the Boise Urban Garden School. It's right here in Boise. They actually maintain 2 public gardens that they run. But who else does gardening education here in the valley?
It's very easy to find things over social media as well. You can look up community gardens with your city or town name on Facebook, and all sorts of different outlets will pop up from there.
Nice, nice. Yeah. How often do you do classes and training on garden prep?
We actually do a class a month, but I do it through various different organizations. So that's my own personal goal, is to make sure that I do something in relation to that every month. So in the harvest season, we get together and we teach people how to pull the produce off the plants without damaging them, and then we teach classes on food preservation, how to dehydrate or can them, or how best to to store them, that sort of thing. And in the spring, we have the seed store share parties. That's a tongue twister. To get everyone together so we
Let
can
me try
share
that.
the
A
heirloom
seed store
share
parties.
parties.
Seed store share yeah, definitely a tongue twister.
It is hard.
You did it though.
Spit it out.
Yeah.
No. So it all just is relevant to the season, really. Everything revolves around the planting and harvest season.
So like right now, this time of year, it's it's October, so it's post-harvest. You know, we've already gone through, we've collected the fruits of our labor for the summer.
And now it's time to organize, plan, and get ready for the next planting season.
So like right now, what we should be out doing is tilling the soil and prepping it for spring planting, or what would be your recommendation for working with your garden space this time of year?
It's space clearing time. It's time to tear down all the old and to get it prepped and ready. And then also to network with people and start putting together a formidable plan for your next garden season.
Team building for that community garden.
Yeah, that's true.
So definitely networking, you definitely need to make sure you got the right crew together in order to make it and that the crew's educated, right?
Yes, this is true. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
So what sort of, you do one class a month right now. You personally handle one class a month. What other programs in the area right now could somebody be able to look up to try and figure out, to get educated on what they need to be doing with the garden space right now?
I keep making reference back to the Boise School District Community Gardens Program. It's my favorite.
So the community school programs, and again, Bugs, they're also doing that this time of year as well. Why do you think it's important?
It's important because of the linking of the different generations of people. It helps all of us to connect and sustain and not only survive but thrive. It's important for the youth to be intrigued, interested, and inspired. It's important for the adults to establish a sense of community and belonging, and it also helps our elders to pass on the knowledge that would otherwise be lost.
So this is intergenerational linking. This is education from one generation to the next, teaching the wisdom of the elders through the actions of the parents into the education of the children.
Yeah. The importance of community gardening and urban gardening.
Intergenerational community gardening. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So what are some of the other things that you think would be important? Food deserts. Hasn't happened in Boise yet. But as we look at greater population density, quite possibly could. And we got a generation of kids that still think, the food comes from the grocery store.
A lot of us learned in the recession of 2007 and 2009 that things do get tight. Like, we don't have to refer back to the Great Depression to have seen how economic crisis can have a huge impact on our daily life in the home and in the community. So it's imperative for us to prep and be prepared in the event of things, monetary value being preposterous. Like, if we put emphasis on the individual and the family and the home, then all of us as a community are better resilient in being able to make maneuvers to handle those kinds of crises.
Right, so basically one of the things is being able to produce your own food, knowing how to produce your own food garden is part of that layer of food security that tends to get lost in a lot of cases as we move towards urbanization.
Yeah, our independence is definitely dependent on self-sustainability. We need to be prepared for in the event of any crisis scenario or event.
Right, because it'd really suck if all of a sudden the truck stopped moving, right?
This is true. Actually, millennials have already proven that they're more interested in urban and community gardening. Over the last 15 years, almost half of us have at least attempted some kind of food producing plant or gardening.
An actual real garden.
Yeah.
All right. Not one of the funny weed kind of gardens. Okay. But that honestly is really good news. You know, the recognition among millennials and the youth that they do need to get beyond what's on the grocery store shelves and actually start thinking about how they are capable of producing their own sustenance, creating their own food security with their own hands. And I believe it's important.
I do too.
So, you got a favorite place to go for your seeds, don't you?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I really don't. I get them all over the place. Honestly, I think the seed store share parties. Yeah, because if you interlink with your community, you'll find that these people, your local community has the best seeds that work with your climate, your terrain, your area. So, like some tomatoes grow better here than other places, or some peppers grow better here than other places. And you need those heirloom seeds, so you have to have that connect to get the ones that aren't genetically modified and are stunted and you can't harvest the seeds from them for the next year.
I completely forgot about the growing zones and just how important that is as far as using native plants as opposed to trying to import hybrid variations from other parts of the country. And you're absolutely perfect. The heirloom seeds coming from your seed store parties, perfect. Local community grown. You already know it grows in the area, so that's already covered.
Yeah.
Because it grew there last year for them to harvest the seeds. So, we move into food prep, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any good classes in the area on how to preserve your garden harvest to keep it through the winter?
I like to go through the community education program for that one, which is also linked to Boise School District. But it's actually taught by volunteers from multiple different organizations, and you don't actually have to hold a degree in order to teach a class. So that's where we get a lot more of our elders to come in and work with us and teach us how to dehydrate and can foods. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you run into any bureaucratic obstacles like Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, or anything?
Things are rather loosely regulated here in Boise, so we're very fortunate in that. We do have some issues with zoning, but we do a lot of, that's where we try to implement city, we'll contact the city about empty lots and ask if we can lease the land to do community gardens in between things being built. So that's our city pulling together and utilizing space to the best of our capabilities in the meantime before they actually start to build buildings in those areas.
So when was the last major project like that that you were aware of?
I believe the North End Garden off Jefferson Street.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was the last one that I know of. I don't know. I mostly work and operate here in Boise, so.
Excellent. Well, I think that's pretty much going to wrap up our time here today.
Okay.
Yes, question.
since this is new to me, I was wondering, do the kids from the school actually participate in this as part of the school curriculum, or is it just something summer that's optional?
Both, actually. It is dependent on teachers' routine and schedules, but I do believe that every class does participate at some point or another. They all pull together and go out to the garden and poke in the dirt and weed and water.
So actually, it's a class that continues through the summer?
In the summer, it's more volunteers. Then it falls back on predominantly the staff of the school, teachers and janitorial. Yeah, they'll keep an eye on the garden, make sure that it's safe and secure.
But the
and
kids are there for the planting, and the kids are there for the final
for the
harvest.
harvest. Mhm. Yep.
Cool.
And the children get to document and watch the fruits of their labor, come into being. So it's it is a program that does go year round, but yeah, the kids don't get to be there for the summertime. So
But they do get to collect it and move it to the free food table at the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's nice. They start the school year with the harvest and get to see the enjoyment, and then they get to start or finish out the school year by starting a brand new garden they can see the results of when they start school the next year.
it's very true.
Yeah, it's rather inspirational, actually teaching kids how to enjoy all the fruits of their labor.
It helps them to appreciate where their food comes from as well. They then realize the time, the diligence, the work that goes into it, and I think it actually promotes more healthy diets as well, because they're more prone to actually eat something that they themselves help bring about, as opposed to just getting it handed to you. I don't want that. Oh, I actually grew that. They're more susceptible to actually trying new things, and I like that it's inspirational in that aspect as well.
Nice. We got any other questions from the audience? Awesome. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Sorry, I was so nervous.
Okay, we had a good time. Thank you again, Dana.
Yep, thank you.